Yeah, it looks real good.
What's new, guys?
Brian, you want to unmute and
Brian,
use
you're
Dr.
muted.
Zohns?
Oh, geez, guys.
This is going so good.
We're professionals.
There we go.
Jason muted me. I didn't mute myself.
Well, I didn't mean to question that. Jason, go ahead and mute Brian again. It's cool.
Yeah, sometimes people have to go into timeout, and now he's out. So now he can talk.
Okay, now I'm out of timeout. So, Dr. Zohns, thanks for joining us.
Well, I've been looking forward to this all day long.
Well, it's an honor for all of us to have you on here. Some of us, Kevin, Stephen, and myself, and even the boys, my boys, have grown up knowing you. And I think to know Mark is to admire him and look up to him. If everybody that I know, and we run into your old students at a lot of the events we go to, and it's clear the impact that you have on everybody's life. So we really appreciate you being with us tonight. So,
well, you guys are far too kind. Far too kind.
well, none of the rest of those assholes said that. I'm the one that's saying that.
In fairness, I asked you to unmute so that you could say it. Like, I deserve at least 20% credit.
Okay.
I think you're neat too, Mark. I think you're real neat.
Well,
Me too.
Thanks.
Well, so Mark, what we like to do here is get to know our guests a little bit deeper than just pulling. We will talk about your pulling too, but why don't you tell us what you did, I guess, for your career. We know where you are now and what some of your other interests are. So what was you're Dr. Zohns, but why?
Well, I guess, this goes back to why I chose to go to Cal Poly in the first place. And my brother, Mike, came up to Cal Poly in 1970 to get his degree in horticulture. And I used to come up and visit him. Most of the time it was on Poly Royal weekend. And, and I was kind of trying to decide where I wanted to go to school and what I wanted to major in. And I saw this big, long tin building and started asking my brother, hey, what goes on in there? And he says, well, that's the ag engineering shop building. And so I spent a lot of time going through and looking at the projects that students were working on at the time. And that solidified my choice to go to Cal Poly as a student. So I started in 1976, and it's kind of a funny story because I graduated in June. Grew up down in the San Fernando Valley. I graduated in June, and I came up here and started summer quarter. So I started summer quarter like a week after I graduated from high school because I was worried that this whole university life was going to be pretty tough, So anyway, I got my undergraduate degree at Cal Poly, and then I got an opportunity to teach one quarter. I guess that was the fall of '81. I got an opportunity to teach. Trevor's familiar with the Bray 121 class. That's an ag mechanics class for non-major students. So I got to teach that class, and then I decided this teaching gig is a lot of fun. And so realizing that if I wanted to make that into a career, I was going to have to get more than the bachelor's degree. So I went up to UC Davis at the time. That was really the best place to get an advanced degree in ag engineering. In fact, that was the only university in California that offered an advanced degree in ag engineering. And so I went up there with the intention of getting my master's degree and then coming back to Cal Poly. And I finished up my master's, and Cal Poly made me an offer. And at the same time, Davis made me an offer to stick around and get my doctorate. And at that time I was single. I figured, you know what, it's going to be much easier to do it now than to come back. And so yeah, that's what that is all about. And then I came running. I got to plug in my power here, guys. Hold on a second. Lori? I think I'm
Oh, no.
Anyway, I came running back to Cal Poly once I finished my doctoral degree, and the rest is history. And it's kind of funny. I do not have a PhD. My degree is a Doctor of Engineering, and the only difference between a PhD and the Doctor of Engineering is in the dissertation. And it's kind of funny. I had a number of really fantastic instructors up at Davis, and then I had some that weren't so good. But one of my favorite instructors was in the mechanical engineering department, and he was actually, I think he was a Cal Poly grad. And I said, hey, which way should I go with this degree? And he says, well, this is how I look at it. He says, if you want to be known as the guy that wears the white lab coat and walks around with a clipboard, you get the PhD. If you want to be known as the guy that maybe has a pair of coveralls on and is greasy and dirty, you get the Doctor of Engineering. And I said, all right, I know exactly what I need to do. And I finished up there and got married to Lori, and we moved down to San Luis. I think that was summer of '86, and I started teaching in fall quarter of '86. And so that's it, guys. That's it.
So when did you retire? 2 years ago or more?
Well,
more.
I actually filled out all my retirement papers in 2016. And what Cal Poly does for tenured faculty members is it gives you the option to retire, and your retirement is based on your number of years of service and your age and all that. But they're then required to offer you 50% employment for an additional 5 years if you want. And then that extra money is on top of your retirement. And so I did that for 3 years. And so my last quarter teaching would have been spring of 19. And yeah, I figured that's enough. It's time for the students to learn from someone who's a lot younger and smarter and all that. So official retirement was in 2016, but I did teach 3 more spring quarters until spring.
Over 30 years at Cal Poly then, correct?
Yeah.
Teaching? Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
God, flew by.
I imagine.
I bet it did.
By. Yeah, it's crazy. And some of you guys, well, you know Mike Fonts, okay? He's the announcer for the Cal Poly show, and Mike and I were classmates. He was a couple of years behind me, even though he's a couple of years older than me, which is kind of weird. But he texted me. I think Lori and I were up in Oregon, and he texted me. He says, "Hey," he says, "you know this character named Ted Kohlenberger?" And I go, "Oh my God, that guy was in my very first 421 class that I taught back in 86, 87." And it's really neat to stay in contact with a lot of my former students. Yeah.
That's cool.
You mentioned that, like, you obviously get to make a lot of good connections with a lot of students. Is there any one in particular that stands out?
That's
Well,
tough.
I'd stayed longer, so I could have kind of hammered on Trevor a little bit as a student. But, you know, boy, yeah, there are a couple that stand out. One of them, his name is Russ Angold, and Russ was one of the 3 students who built Mustang Fever back in 1999 is when they finished that tractor. And Russ was and still is, I mean, just a super sharp kid. And the interesting thing is, and Trevor, you know, Bray 234, that's the power and machinery hydraulics class. I used to teach that class, and the first time I taught it was when Russ was a student, and I said, Russ, you ought to take this class. It's a good class. And he says, I'd like to take it, but you give too much damn homework. And so he, the only one in the rest of the class of students, the seniors, that decided not to take my class because it was too much homework. And he has gone on to just do some fantastic things. Russ was the founder of Berkeley Bionics. Okay, now what his company did is they built exoskeletal structures for the military to help the soldiers be able to carry 120-pound backpacks and not even really feel that it's there. And his company went on to design exoskeletons for those who are recovering from spinal cord injuries and that type of thing. And it's just amazing to see what he has done with his career. And so he is one that kind of does stick out.
That's cool.
In my mind. And, you know, the other 2 students who worked on that tractor, they're up there too. Miles Anderson is now, I think he's actually, well, he's the head of Anderson Logging out of Fort Bragg, and Bobby Pierce was the 3rd of that trio. Bobby is he's the head of I think it's Patterson Irrigation District up in Patterson, California. So yeah, there, you know, and there's just a bunch of top-notch students out there.
Yeah.
I see John Bohr there is asking how many pulling vehicles were designed or built at Cal Poly shop. Do you guys see that question too?
Yeah, we all see it.
Yep.
That's a really good question. I'd have to kind of go through them in my mind. You know, it's my understanding that one of the first, if not the first, modified tractor in California was built in Shop 7 by Ted Link. Ted Link was a couple of years older than me. Mechanized Ag, now it's Ag Systems Management. The name of his tractor was Horse with No Name. And it's too bad I can't share some pictures with you guys because I had some lined up to show you on my iMac here, but it's not working. So that's one. And then Dan Clendenin, who farms nuts out of Merced, he built a tractor in Shop 7. The name of that one was Big Banana. And then there was Gary Weisenberger built a tractor. This is before most of your guys' time. It had a 331 Chrysler Hemi, but it had this weird V-belt drive Paxton supercharger on it. And that engine came off of an air compressor from up at the aero unit at Cal Poly. So there's 3 tractors right there that came out of Shop 7. One of the first modified 4x4s came out of Shop 7. This thing was God, it wasn't much bigger than a side by side really, but it had a 426 Hemi in it. I can't remember the name of that, but then let's see. So there's those 3 tractors, and then they're really. Oh, my roommate when I was in college, he had a mini modified, had a 426 Hemi in it. The name of it was Defiance. He did quite a bit of work on that in the shop. And then there really wasn't too much that I can recall until 98, 99, when those 3 students built Mustang Fever. And I got to drive that tractor one time at a pole in Paso Robles, and I decided that
Once was enough.
once was enough for that tractor. That if I wanted to keep doing it, I'd have to build my own. So I built mine 2 years later.
Why don't you tell us about yours, Mark?
Why?
Well, because that's what everybody's here to hear.
Well, I guess I can't talk about my tractor without talking about Mustang Fever, because those 3 students, when they, hey, that's a nice picture there. Those 3 students, when they asked if they could build Mustang Fever as their class project in 421, 422. Trevor knows about, Trevor's in 422 right now this quarter, right, Trevor?
Yep, I am.
Yeah. So that was their class project in my class. Their project was actually one of 8 projects that came out of that class.
Wow.
And so, when Gary Weisenberger and I started talking about how can we build a tractor for Cal Poly that, is going to be reliable and but still have a decent amount of horsepower, and we knew right away that we just have to get our hands on an Allison engine, stock Allison engine, and we started making phone calls and to the guys that used to run those back in the late 70s, early 80s, and we were able to get our hands on one, and there hasn't been much that's been done to that engine that is now being used on Mustang Legacy. A few repairs here and there, but it's the same crank and pistons, and none of that has been changed in that engine. And so when I built mine, I knew I got to do the same thing. I can't compete with these guys that have blown Hemis, and to me, it's I strongly feel that consistency is the name of the game, and I don't tell too many people, and I don't know how many people are listening. But,
It's just the 7 of us.
okay.
There's like 4,000. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I've got over 450 passes on my tractor, and it's the same clutch. It's a 5-disc Crowler. I mean, so it's a pretty robust clutch, but it is time to replace the floaters and the discs.
Yeah.
But,
What's
That's impressive.
what's the state of the world of Allison engines right now? Like, what if a guy, can you find them?
you can still find engines that guys have stashed in their barns. I did buy, with my partner Leo, we bought a backup engine that's still in a crate, and I still have that out in my shop. I robbed the fuel pump off of that because it's a bigger fuel pump than the one I originally had. But that's the thing is some of these are still stashed in different places. I know where there's one in Santa Maria right now, and the guy's trying to sell it to me, but
Will it fit in a Honda Odyssey?
my wife's not going to support that idea. But here's the thing: is they'll make
back.
pistons they'll make pistons. The Allison's the same bore and stroke as a Cummins 855. Okay, 5.5-inch bore, 6-inch stroke, and so they'll make pistons. Aries will make pistons. There's other guys that'll make pistons for that bore. Nobody makes custom connecting rods, and I think that's because you can still get ones out of old engines, and it's kind of a unique design. On one side of the block, you've got blade rods. On the other side, you have fork rods. So you got the blade rod and the fork rod both on the same journal on the crankshaft. Nobody has made an aftermarket crankshaft for those engines. And the crankshaft is the coolest thing. You know, they made right-hand rotation Allisons and left-hand rotation Allisons. And all of the single engine aircraft that used the Allison engine in World War II, those used what was known as a right-hand rotation engine. The twin engine aircraft, like the P-38 Lightning, had both a right hand and a left hand so the torque would counteract.
Balance out, yeah.
And balance it out. And so they made far fewer left-hand rotation Allisons. Now the left-hand rotation Allison, in essence, is the same rotation as an automotive V8, okay? So what we did with my tractor, with Cal Poly's tractor, is since those engines are right-hand, they're more readily available, the differential's in upside down.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it's just flipped upside down, and now
So
actually
transmission's running in reverse. I mean, not in reverse, but gears are running the opposite direction.
That's right. Now,
No
actually,
kidding.
I take back what I said. Mustang Legacy has a J box in it. So when we built that chassis, we thought that what we should do is build a rolling chassis that someone else might want to use. And there's far more guys that are running conventional rotation automotive type engines. So we built that chassis with the rear end in right side up, but then the J box switches the direction, the rotation direction. But mine is still backwards.
I mean, you wouldn't want to. Hey, the one that you found in a barn, is it right side, or right hand, or left hand?
It's a right-hand rotation. Now, what I was going to talk about was the crankshaft, okay? You can turn a right-hand rotation into a left-hand rotation. One of the things that you do is you swap sides. You put the blade rods on the opposite side, fork rods on the opposite side. And I can't remember which ones are on which side right now. The crankshaft gets flipped end for end, okay? The crankshaft has exactly the same flange arrangement on one end as it does on the other. And so the crankshaft gets flipped completely around. And then there's a reversing gear in the accessory drive that makes everything work as far as the supercharger goes. But what is interesting is the right-hand rotation engines have to have a right-hand starter motor. Left-hand rotation have to have a left-hand rotation starter motor. And
I mean,
Hey,
otherwise
Mark,
it'd spin it backwards.
Yeah. Over the years, is there one pulling event that stands out as, say, your favorite? Like, or one that you just a pass that stood out as your best pass you've ever had, or something remarkable?
There is one. I'm Brian, and I'm sorry it wasn't one of your shows.
Damn.
That's okay. If it's a different one, just don't mention the name of the promoter. Jason just marked.
I'm out.
Jason, you're muted.
Jason muted himself and I'm out of John.
So it was a show in Stockton, and
Well, it would have been a Max Cackle. That's okay.
right. But I'm trying to remember. Gary had his sled there, and I think I don't know if Brian, if you had your sled there as well. And the track, it was it rained like crazy and the track was just horrible. And we had two tracks running side by side. And I put about 75, maybe it was 100 feet on Leroy Vieira, and which is that just doesn't happen, guys. That just doesn't happen. And I don't know why. I asked Gary. I said, "What the hell? How come I went so damn far?" He says, "You're the only one that picked the right spot on the track." He says, "Everyone else chose the wrong spot." And I go, "Gary, I never picked. Brian, have I ever told you where I want the sled? I
No.
don't think I ever have." I said, "Gary, when you take off with that tractor, at least my tractor, your job is just to keep it between the white lines. You might try to aim this way, but the tractor's going to go where it wants to go." And in Stockton that night, the tractor chose the right path, and I just went along for the ride.
She's a
And
mutter.
that is
Yeah, the
one-
wheels were happy. The wheels were
That's
happy.
it. That's it.
I have a couple passes, guys, from GSI I want to share real quick. So he said, keep it between the white lines or the white jersey barriers. That was 2023. That was a 2023 Golden State Invitational. If you stick around, you might win a T-shirt from the 2023 Golden State Invitational in our Facebook Marketplace game. Back to you, Dr. Mark.
Well,
Yeah, I guess I have been addicted to this sport ever since I was a snotty-nosed junior high school kid. And this is my understanding is the first tractor pull in California was at Poly Royal in 1972, and I went to that primarily because my brother drove a 560 Farmall. This was before there were any modifieds whatsoever. He drove and it was a step-on skid pan, right? You guys are all familiar with that, right? Okay.
sure.
Step-on boat, right? And that was the first pull that in California. I'd been to a couple of other tractor pulls back east. I went to my dad and mom took us back to New York State, Western New York, where all of my relatives are from, and my dad's oldest brother took over the family dairy, and he took me to a tractor pull in 1969 at the Wattsburg Fair in Pennsylvania, and I how could you not get excited about that, and even though that was all stock tractors, yeah.
Earlier you mentioned the consistency of bailout, and a number of times you've won our points championship, including this 2024, the light modified points champion. So we want to congratulate you on that, and also thank you for always supporting our events. You support all the events, and that's very admirable. You keep a busy schedule all summer, and for somebody to run that many times and do that well, that's pretty awesome. So we want to thank you.
I'm lucky to have a very understanding wife, for sure. Sure.
Yes.
I was looking to see. Yeah, she's right up there, hiding out there.
Did you say that loud enough for her to hear you though? 'Cause
Yes,
you may need to. Okay.
She heard it. She heard
Attaboy.
it. But actually, you know what? Hey, Lori, which date was it? We went to a tractor pull. Our second date was a tractor pull in Turlock.
Attaboy.
And you knew from then on she was the one.
It's
Only because I let him do it.
One of the things that we do, and when I was advisor to Cal Poly's team, and they're still doing it, is keeping a logbook. And, because you take a look at the track and you try to come up with some type of measure of hardness. And actually, years ago, we built, it's referred to as a cone penetrometer. Cone penetrometer will actually measure soil hardness. And basically, it's a hardened pointed, almost like a pencil, except it's about 3/8 inch diameter. And then it's just like any kind of other material hardness tester. It measures deflection and force, in this case, in the soil. And we thought that, that'd be a good idea. We ought to start taking cone penetrometer readings and put that in our logbook. And but I think we did that one year, and then it kind of went by the wayside. But the logbook, I think, is a really good thing, because you can look at a track and you go, man, this track looks like Los Banos. The last time we were in Los Banos, which was hell, damn near 10 years ago, and you can kind of go back and set your tractor up, similarly.
We have a
Coming from
pretty
the guy who doesn't spot the sled.
Yeah.
we have a pretty sophisticated way of ranking tracks. Also, it's either good, bad, shitty, really shitty, wet, dry. So I mean, it's not quite that pentrometer thing, but
But still pretty scientific.
it's sophisticated as hell.
I was gonna say you should see the logbook. Like a lot of them, like Madeira, I bet I wrote like hella good or something. Like it's pretty scientific.
Yeah, well, I keep a logbook in the sled too, and that's the way the tracks are ranked. They're good, really good, shitty, really shitty. I mean, but it means something to whoever wrote it, but nobody else knows.